May I have your attention, please? Shalom, everyone. My name is future priest Yisrayl. I want to serve you forever as a priest very soon. It's now time to start buying the seats for Sabbath services.
May I have your attention, please? Shalom, everyone. My name is future priest Benai Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It is my privilege and honor to present to you the future priests and priestesses now entering the sanctuary. It is my honor and privilege to present to you future priest Deacon Twaki Hawkins.
Praise Yahweh. You may be seated. Shalom, everyone. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today I'm going to be talking about the persecution. There's been a lot of things throughout the years with persecution. We're actually covering this in the workshops, but I just want to go over the persecution and encourage everyone to stand strong no matter what comes. We're going to start out in Matithia on page, if everyone can turn over to Matithia, chapter 5 on page 731, and we're going to look at verses 10 through 12. It's Matithia chapter 5 and verses 10 through 12. It says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake." So notice that. If we're persecuted for righteousness' sake, then we are blessed. For theirs is the kingdom of Yahweh. Blessed are you when men will revile and persecute you, and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For in the same manner they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So we're being persecuted for the same manner. Well, why are we being persecuted? Think about that. Well, Yeshua tells us why they persecuted him, and it's the same in these last days. We can turn over to Yachanan, and we'll find out why they're persecuting us. Yachanan chapter 15. It's on page 833. Yachanan 15, 18 through 23. On page 833. It says, "If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would have loved its own. But because you are not part of the world, for I have chosen you out of the world, for this reason the world hates you." So because we're not teaching the same thing that the Catholic Church teaches, we're not going along with the holidays and the other things that is taught by the world, they hate us for that. And there's also another reason we're going to read later on. Let's look at verse 20. It says, "Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his ruler. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my word, they will keep yours also. But all these things they will do to you because of my name, for they do not know him who sent me." And look at verse 22. "If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not have had their sins revealed. But now they have no cloak covering for their sins." And that's Yeshua was doing that back then, and Pastor is doing it right now. And he doesn't care what they say, what they do. He's still going to continue doing it because that's his job. He was the one sent to do that. He was to warn the world of what they're doing is wrong. And nothing's going to stop him. He will continue to do that. And you can count on that. Verse 23, "He who hates me also hates my Father." So if they disagree with what Pastor is saying, if they hate Pastor, then they're hating Yahweh. Let's turn over to Matithia. Back over to Matithia, but let's look at chapter 10 this time. It's on page 736, and we're going to start out in verse 16. And this is the warning of persecution that Yeshua gave to his disciples. It says, "Behold, I send you out like sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves." Let's look at verse 17 as well. "But beware of men, for they will hand you over to councils and scourge you in their synagogues." So Yeshua is telling them, this is what's going to occur. If you continue to teach the laws of Yahweh, you're going to get persecuted for it. Well, as we saw, did the prophets and apostles give up and say, well, I'm not going to teach the laws of Yahweh anymore because they were being persecuted? No, they didn't. It's the same here in these last days. We will not stop telling them what is bringing these curses upon them and that they're sinning. Skip down to verse 22. It says, and you will be hated above all men for my name's sake. So notice that, for my name's sake, for Yeshua's name's sake. But he who endures to the end will be saved. So if we endure, if we keep on going, and if we don't stop, we will be saved. Verse 23, but when they persecute you in this city, flee into another. For truly I say to you, by no means will I deal with the cities of Israel until the coming of the Son of Man. If we look over to the next page, verse 31, it says, therefore do not be afraid, for you are worth more than many sparrows. And I encourage everyone, go back and read this whole part where it talks about the warning of persecution, because it's very important. We are facing these same persecution in these last days. But just keep the same mindset that Pastor keeps. He's not going to give up. He's not going to stop telling them that they're wrong. And we have to do that over and over again. So I encourage everyone, stand strong. And like Yeshua said here, do not be afraid. Do not fear what they say or what they have to come against us. So with that, if you all please stand.
Shalom, shalom, pure saints of Yahweh, the royal priesthood. Please be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You know, Yahweh's making us into His perfect teachers, into His perfect teachers. And we had an opportunity recently to do some more teaching. The House of Yahweh has had the opportunity again to do some more teaching in the schools. There was quite a bit of it, actually, that took place recently. And much to our surprise, you're going to hear a lot about this from the future priests and also the priests when they get up here. But the schools that we went to is very interesting because we noticed, first of all, the influence of Yahweh that was at these schools. Now, we got to remember that influences cover a lot of things. I'm not going to get into that right now. But if you could take a look right here, that's the purple and gold book of Yahweh. And you know, Yahweh does these things for a reason. The reason we have reminders, the reason things are certain colors, it's all there for a reason, which we'll get into a little later. But just keep that in mind. And now these teachers and students that we dealt with, they were amazingly humble as we came into their school and taught them the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, which they all appreciated. I mean, it was an amazing couple days that we had. I'm not going to tell you where it's at yet. You'll see it momentarily, and you'll hear about it from the future priests. And if we could, though, pay attention to the first disc that we're going to show and look for the influence of Yahweh throughout the video, okay? Thank you very much. And with that, can you play the first video, please? Disc 1. Praise Yahweh. It's my great honor and privilege, if you'll all please stand. It's my great honor and privilege to present to you our first speaker, the great future priest, White Buffalo Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. Shalom, not Shabbat Shalom. Okay, I'm going to be talking about the Carrizo Springs Junior High School. As you saw in the video, we were able to go to many different schools on this missionary trip, and I'm going to be talking about the junior high school in Carrizo Springs. Carrizo in Carrizo Springs means reeds, like the reeds on the sukkah. And the colors for the school, actually the whole school district, the main colors was purple and gold. So you could see Yahweh's hand in this everywhere we went. And actually, everywhere we went was purple and gold. So their mascot for the school, it was the wild cat. And even that was purple and gold. So everything was purple and gold here. And the school counselor was Miss Gibson. Her name was Miss Gibson, and she was the school counselor for that junior high school. By the way, here is the Carrizo Springs Wildcats here. As you can see it right there, it's purple and it's gold. All right, so Miss Gibson was the school counselor, and she liked the program, and she had much interest in the program, and we got an interview with her. And in her office, she had a big plaque. It was a poster that had words on both sides, and it said things like dream big and have a positive attitude and use kind words. And the things on that poster on both sides, the peaceful solution had those words on that poster had to tie in with the peaceful solution. And so we saw that everywhere we went was purple and gold, and as you saw in that video, there was the purple and gold in that school, and the whole school district was purple and gold. So remember, like that poster said, have a positive attitude and dream big and set your mind for that goal to be in Yahweh's kingdom and become a teacher of peace. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the great future priest, Deacon Melchizedek Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today, my subject is on teaching the way of peace, not the way of war. If we could all turn over to Isaiah 2 and verse 2. It's found on page 531. It says, it's Isaiah 2 and it's verse 4, and it says, "He will judge among the nations and will rebuke many people. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn war anymore." So we had the privilege to teach the way to peace. And as you look around in the world, you see nations like United States, Russia, and so on. They're preparing themselves. They're getting ready for war. And you see like the United States getting ready to go against ISIS. And this is not the way to peace. They may say it's the way to peace, but it is not. we have to teach peace. We have to teach peace. We can't go and bomb another nation or something like that for them to practice peace. Now, the way of Cain was not true peace, joy, or true love. It was, as you could see in the world, it was continual war, vengeance, and retaliation. If we could turn over to Genesis 4, and it's verse 8, and it says, Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass that they were spread abroad, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. And then verse 14 says, Surely you have driven me this day from the face of the ground. I shall not be seen by your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. For there shall be continual war, vengeance, and retaliation. And so that is the way of Cain, continual war, vengeance, and retaliation. And as you can see in Yada 1:11, it says how, Yada 1 and verse 11, it says, Woe to them, for they've gone in the way of Cain, which is continual war, vengeance, and retaliation. And they have run greedily in the error of Balaam. For reward they have perished in the rebellion of Korah. Now, we should not be acting this way. And with that, everyone please stand. And I'll turn it over to the next speaker, future priest Deacon Abba Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now, I'm going to get right into it. As I'm going to be talking about, there's, on all the events that we went to, purple and gold was the main color, okay? Now, the purple, there was a school, in the purple classroom, they had a purple classroom that was painted purple, and that had probably the most interactive and obedient students in that school, and a very great teacher who was very acceptive of the peaceful solution. Now, the teacher's name was Yisrayl Alvarado, and that he was teaching in the purple classroom. Now, we went to the school and we taught them how to respond to disrespect and self-respect and how to deal with bullying and stuff like this. And this is really the true way that we're going to bring peace, joy, unity, that we're going to bring this to the world, that we're going to teach them how to bring peace, okay, through the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Okay, and we stayed in this school teaching all day. We had a couple of classrooms that we're teaching, but one of the classes that I was involved in teaching, Mr. Yisrayl Alvarado, while we were teaching, he had the some of the football team in there. And some of them were wearing purple ties. And that was amazing because he had all the football team wearing ties and shirts and stuff. And there were several of them that were wearing purple ties. And so even the classroom inside was purple. The doors on several of the schools were purple. So there's a lot of things that were purple and gold in this on this trip. So just remember, this is how we're going to bring peace. We taught them self-respect, because without self-respect, if you don't have respect for yourself, you can't respect others. Okay. So, and this is how we're going to end the bullying and the hatred and the wars and the disrespect that's going on in our society with the peaceful solution. So I encourage you, make sure to get the new book here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the next speaker,
future priest Deacon Yaakov.
Shalom, everyone. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. Now, I'll be continuing on the latest missionary trip, and we went to a certain school called Oilton Elementary School. And as Deacon Abba Shalom, the great Deacon Abba Shalom, talked about, they were all in purple. Purple and gold was their main color. Now, we interviewed them, the principal, and we interviewed some of the teachers in the different schools we went to, and they said that the purple meant to calm people down, and they just liked the color purple. And same as we use the purple and the gold. And but we know that it's the royalty, and Yahweh likes purple and gold too. Now, as we were teaching there were certain posters up on the walls that encouraged the class to practice the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Some posters said respect, help, educate, serve, and things like that. And all the students in the elementary school, they were calm and they participated. And that's how we need to be. Well, there's classes, the workshop classes, any other classes, we need to participate in them. And that's how we grow. Now, they love that puppet show. It was the same puppet show that they had here on the Peaceful Solution Day. And they loved the puppet show, and they enjoyed the Peaceful Solution. They all enjoyed it and said it was a great program. Now, they liked the program, and the posters will help them to grow. And while we're wearing this purple and gold, we're striving for the kingdom of Yahweh, and we're competing for this great reward, for this crown. And we're not competing against the Dallas Cowboys or whatever. We're competing for the crown, the great kingdom, and we will have eternal life if we keep Yahweh's laws. Now that's all the time I have, and if y'all please stand. It's my great honor and privilege to introduce to you the great Deacon Shalom Hawkins. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now, today I'm going to be talking about when we went to Arlington. They had the student council, and I'm going to be reading from the character unit. On page 129, it says, "There is a leader in you. Of course, not everyone will become a government, community, or religious leader. But in every person's life, there will be opportunities to lead. Have you ever considered that your teacher is a leader? If your parents supervise others or are managers on their jobs, then they too are leaders. You also may be called upon to be a leader. The fact is, leading others does not have an age limit." And these students that were in the school council, the student council, they were super young. They were in like grade 1 to grade 3. They were really young, but they were learning how to teach others. They were learning how to lead others in the right path. So regardless of how young or old you are, you can learn how to lead and value being a positive leader. Sooner or later, everyone is asked to lead in one way or another. You may be asked to lead a group project, or you may be chosen as a captain of a team. So be prepared. All right, now the student council, they were the best behaved students in the classroom. But the student council, they were the ones that paid the most attention to the class. They they paid attention, and when we interviewed them about what they did, they could tell us everything that they learned in the class. And with that, I'd like to show my video, please.
How can you use what you've learned today in your personal life?
To pay even more attention to my mom and do exactly what she says when she says it.
Okay, so pay attention and obey quickly. That way there's no, you don't get in trouble later on. All right, so y'all learned a lot from today? Yes. Do you want the Peaceful Solution to come back to your school? Yes. That's great. I'm glad y'all are here and glad y'all were willing to take this interview. So it's a pleasure.
All right, as you saw there, they want the Peaceful Solution to come back to their school because they see how it can help them and help all the other students. And with that, if everyone will please stand. It's a privilege and honor to turn it over to the great Deacon Yisrayl.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Well, I'm going to be continuing on the subject to the last missionary trip. And while we were in Laredo, we went to the Kinder Club Learning Center, which is where they deal with children. And we got there and we had a the Peaceful Solution missionary team had a set up for the event. We had to set up the tables, set up the chairs before the event. Now, right before the event, we had volunteers from the Peaceful Solution missionary team. Some were ushering people to their seats. Some of them were parking cars, and others were serving refreshments. Now, their color there was purple, and the woman that was running the place was dressed in purple. And they said that they do it because everyone in the family liked it. Now, we were teaching from the parenting manual, lesson 3, which is understanding the connection between character and the parenting. And we went over the positive character traits and also the negative character traits, and how you have to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. And I have a picture I would like to show you. This is the map for the Kinder Club Learning Center. And as you can see, 359 here is gold, and then Concord Hills Boulevard is purple, and as you can see there, they intersect. But so the 359 there is gold, and then the Concord Hills is purple. And so now the word Concord in Webster's means agreeing, a state of agreement, harmony, unity. So you can see there unity, or a state of agreement. So they have the gold and the purple, and as I said, the meaning of concord is unity, and now they are in unity with the Peaceful Solution, and they want to use it there at the Kinder Club Learning Center, and we equip the parents with the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. That's all the time I have for you, and with that, if you'll all please stand. It's my great honor and privilege to present to you the great Deacon Tawakia Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. So, you've heard that we've been several places. We've been very busy. And you've noticed all of the people that you've heard of so far have been accepting, right? They're accepting the Peaceful Solution very well. Well, there's one person that isn't. And they don't really like the House of Yahweh. They don't like the Peaceful Solution, any of that. His name is the Pope. And he's rejecting Yahweh's laws openly. He's actually saying that, well, these 613 laws, they're man-made. And I have an article about that, and he's specifically saying this, and he's not afraid to say it either. Well, he's rejecting it, and that was all prophesied. And the article here, this is from, if you can see this is off of CatholicPhilly.com, and says salvation comes from Jesus, not do-it-yourself rules, earthly gurus, the Pope says. And if we look through this article here, if we look down, says right here, the Pope says, Jesus, with his gift of mercy, is the source of salvation, not surefire, clear-cut rules and commandments made by people. You can see that right there. Zoom in. And he goes on to say, God's only wish is to save humanity, but the problem is people often want to decide the rules for salvation themselves. The Pope said in a morning homily on October 3rd, and he goes on to say, it's a tragedy of resistance being saved, the Pope said during an early morning Mass. That is why Jesus uses such strong words against the leaders of his day who put to the test, they set traps for him to see if he falls, but it's a resistance to being saved. So notice there, he says they set traps for him, but who set the traps? It was the Catholic Church, the Pharisees and Sadducees. They did this, but now he's claiming that other people did it. Well, we continue reading. They don't believe in mercy and in forgiveness. They believe in sacrifice. Salvation for them is reduced, listen by this, to fulfilling 613 commandments created in their intellectual and theological frenzy. So he's rejecting Yahweh's laws right there, the 613 commandments. So while the Pope is rejecting that, the peaceful solution is growing. The people are accepting it. It's growing and getting bigger, as we've heard. They're trying to get it out, but it's just coming stronger. The peaceful solution is just coming forth stronger and stronger and stronger. They will not stop this work. So with that, if you all please stand, I have the great honor and privilege to turn it over to Zebulun.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today, the title of my speech is The Missionary Work Through My Eyes. Some of the things I've seen in the missionary work. Everyone remembers the first Gold Feast Passover 2013, correct? Well, ever since that first Gold Feast, whenever we go to the schools or other places for meetings or conferences that we hold, one thing that really sticks out to me is their colors are gold. Whether it be gold chairs, gold walls, gold tables, all of them, some part in there, their color is gold. Now, the last school we went to, their colors was gold and purple, as the colors we were wearing at this feast, is gold and purple. And everyone remembers Noor, correct? Well, ever since that name Noor was brought out, I can't remember how many times I've met someone on these trips with the name Noor. And with seeing those things right there, there's no doubt in my mind that Yahweh is behind this missionary work 100%. He is pushing this program. He is showing, this is my program, and it will go out to all the nations. So, he's showing us all these things. Now, another thing is, at the last school that we went to, at the end of our presentation, we had 3 students come up to us. And they were interested in the program, and they wanted to learn, they want to know how they could become teachers of the peaceful solution. They said, we want to be teachers, we want to help with this peaceful solution. So, and before we left, we had one of the teachers come up to us and said, because we told everyone that there'd be information left at the front desk of the school for anyone that wanted to help. Well, the teacher came up to us as we were leaving and said, well, we have 3 students up in the front desk waiting for their information so they can help with this program. So they said that they wanted help, and they proved that they were wanting to help. So, and that was great, and they said that they like how the children are able to come up there and teach because they feel more of a connection with the children because they feel like that the children know that what they're going through. People their age know what they're going through, so they said that they feel like they can connect to them better. And that's true. We find that a lot more people pay attention whenever us younger ones get up there and we teach. So I just want everybody to be keeping these things in mind. Remember to study and stick with the peaceful solution. Stick with what the House of Yahweh teaches. And with that, I'll turn it over to the great Deacon Yisrayl David Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about this kinder club that we went to. And I'm going to go kind of from the start of how they found out about the peaceful solution, how they heard about it, and how they got it implemented. Previously, a few years back, one of the ladies that worked at the Kinder Club, she met Con Benjamin Krause at a booth that he had set up. She said she was she was about ready to give up all hope. Her son had ADHD, she couldn't deal with it, and there were all kind of problems going on in her life. She didn't know what to do anymore. Well, she met William and talked to him for about 30 minutes, and she said that the information was so powerful, it changed her life. So, praise Yahweh. So, after that, time passed. She said she didn't really have much time to get really involved with it. She had work and all these other things. But then the other woman that helped to run the Kinder Club, Annette, she found the peaceful solution on Facebook. And she heard about it, and she read about it, and she said it was really, really great. So she called up Con Benjamin and talked to him for a little bit, and the next day, they had it implemented in their entire Kinder Club. Praise Yahweh. And not only did they implement it in their Kinder Club with the young students, but also they have an after-school program now, and they're implementing it with the teenagers afterwards. Praise Yahweh. They said that wasn't enough, so they called for a meeting for all the parents of all the students to come and learn about the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Praise Yahweh. Now, during this meeting, what really stuck out to me, there was a group of young children that sat up in the front. And they, like all the rest of the children, were running around and making noise, messing around. But these few, probably about 5 or 6 children in the front, they were sitting attentively, paying attention, answering all the questions correctly. And I thought they were children that Con Benjamin had brought from the classes that he has during the week. But come to find out, those were the most worst behaved children in the Kinder Club that actually went to the Kinder Club. But they answered all the questions correctly. They were doing really great in the class, so that was very incredible. Praise Yahweh. And lastly, the 2 women that run it, Annette and Veronica. Annette is planning to run for JP, Justice of the Peace there. And she says that if she does make it, she's going to implement the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program into the justice system there. So praise Yahweh. So the Peaceful Solution is at work. It's getting out. A lot of people are accepting it. So keep doing your part and study the books and learn to become teachers. And with that, if you'll all please stand. I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker, the great Deacon Samuel Van Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Today I'll be talking about wisdom, because that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing at this time and going out and teaching this world is this wisdom that we receive here at Yahweh's house. The understanding. Now, there's always a quote that, is very popular with the school system is that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. With knowledge, you have power. But without wisdom, they will not understand how to use that knowledge, that power. That's why it's so important that we understand the importance of having wisdom also with having the knowledge. But in your scriptures, if you can turn to Proverbs chapter 3, found on page 497, Proverbs chapter 3, and we're going to be reading verses 13 through 15. Sometimes we think, how these children and these teachers are so amazed by the information that we give them, but we ourselves think of it as very simple, but it's not simple. It's because we've been continuously going over these things and putting it into our minds that when we teach it, it should be just like having a conversation with them. But the precious gift of wisdom, that's what I want to read about. It says, blessed is the man who finds wisdom. And look at the side note there on M. The side note M, it says, who finds the house of Yahweh? Brothers and sisters, the house of Yahweh is the only place where you can find this awesome wisdom. It says, for the gaining of it is better than gaining of silver, and her reward is greater than that of fine gold. Verse 15, wisdom is more valuable than rubies. Nothing you could desire is to be compared to her. Now, if you look also in side note N, it says, if you would die, or if you die, you take wisdom and your righteousness to the grave with you. You know, you can't take the wealth that you've earned in this worldly world with you when you die. You know, and then it reminded me of Daniel chapter 12 and verse 2. You don't have to go there, but I just want to read it to you. It says, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth will wake, some to everlasting life, and some to the shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise will shine as the brightness of the heavens, and those who turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So remember that, brothers and sisters, this wisdom we can carry on, but it only comes from the house of Yahweh. You know, the world is full of this knowledge through the books, you know, the books that they have and through the internet, but there's no wisdom there. There's no wisdom there because they do not have Yahweh's laws. Only Yahweh's laws brings forth that wisdom. So just keep those things in mind. If you all please stand. I can now turn to our next speaker, Great Deacon Tovia.
Shabbat Shalom. You may be seated. So, where would we be without this great house of Yahweh in these last days? Teaching us this great plan of Yahweh and how to become perfect, righteous teachers resembling our last day's witness and resembling Yahweh. You know, we would be out in this world experiencing these sins and the sicknesses and the diseases and all these things. But thankfully, we have this great house of Yahweh. Okay, we have this opportunity to be a part of this work that will never die. It's never going to stop. We have this, you know, and you think about it. I was talking to some people and they were saying, you know, if I was out in the world, what would I be doing? I wouldn't be preparing for speeches or going to classes or learning. I'd be out playing around, getting in trouble, causing malice, you know, all of these things. This is what my life would be like. And we were talking about how it's not much of a life. I mean, you know, you think about it, you're getting in trouble, you're going through all these hardships and problems. So I want to encourage you, remember, the house of Yahweh is your lifeline. The house of Yahweh is your lifeline in these last days. Remember that 1.2 million people are victims of violent crime in the U.S. every year. Okay, that's 26 out of every 1,000 people are, experience some type of violent crime. And I'm not talking about homicide, that type of thing. I'm talking about muggings, things like that. Okay? Remember this. We are the house of Yahweh, and I'd like everyone to repeat this. We are the house of Yahweh, and we are the family of Yahweh. On 1, 2, 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. We are the house of Yahweh. We are the family of Yahweh. And we are the protected of Yahweh, okay? Be joyous. We're in the house of Yahweh in these last days, and we're not going through all these things that are going on in the world. We're protected. We're here at the great house of Yahweh. We're learning Yahweh's laws. Be joyful about it. Don't, I'm in the house of Yahweh. No, I'm in the house of Yahweh, and I'm practicing righteousness here at the great house of Yahweh, okay? So with this, I'm going to turn it over to the great Deacon Anthea.
All right, be seated, be seated. The time is flying. Turn to page 938 in your book of Yahweh. Page 939. You know, we have to always be ready and prepared. Always be ready and prepared. On this last trip, things could change at any given time, and you have to be ready and prepared. It's said here in 2 Timothy 4, verse 2. I encourage you to read the whole chapter, the whole verse also. Preach the word, the law, and the prophets. Be instant, ready to take your position, not in season, out of season. At every given time, we have to be ready. This work is definitely growing. It's going out through all the world, as you will hear more of that coming today. So it's important that we get our minds set. That word ready, it means to be available, okay? Available, ready to serve, in service, in action, or progress. Mentally disposed, receptive frame of mind. That word dispose, it means to put into a willing or receptive frame of mind, inclined. To be willing to accept the information at any given moment and be ready to do that. Not without our interference or our opinion, but to be ready at any given time. That's why it's so beautiful to always be in contact with our counselors. That's why it's so beautiful to come to these classes so we can always be ready to give an answer. Not give our answer, but give the answer that we are taught in the Peaceful Solution. If you also remember in Matthew 5:13, we are the salt of the earth. And what I want to encourage everyone to understand is that the salt, that means to separate, to put aside and save. A person or a group considered as the best or noblest part of society. We are here to learn the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program to be that noblest and best. The word noble, you know what that means, brothers and sisters? Having or showing quality of high moral character. Give yourself a hand. Yes, you deserve it. You and I, we are learning the high moral standard in this character education program. And with that, please stand. I'll turn it over to the great deacon, Deacon David Knighton Hawkins.
Shalom again, saints of Yahweh. Please be seated. Okay, take a look at this right here. I don't know if the monitors really show that great, but see this right here? This is the Carrizo Springs High School. It's a new school. They just built it not long ago. This is the first year it's been open. And see that purple right there? They light that up whenever they're having, well, football games, you know. But this school is gold and purple everywhere you look. Now, I got to tell you, we did not go and set this up. We didn't paint the school. We didn't paint the turf on their field. We didn't do any of that. It was already there. Yahweh came before us, and His influence is upon these people to where they would accept the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. And this program, this Peaceful Solution, is so very, very important. And the influences around you are so very important too. And that's one reason, you know, we've got the purple. Yahweh gives us these reminders, and He puts His influence around us all the time. You know, put it all around you. Let's get the influences of the world away from us. Let's protect our children from all the negative influences out there. You know, you got TV, radio, advertising, clothing, all these things. Your friends. You know, you have to choose friends wisely. You know, clothing. Let's take a look at that for a minute because it's so very important. You know, Pastor said that we should be conservatively dressed. Conservative, not drawing attention to ourselves. You know, it reminds me of the story where a pastor was on the tractor, you know, out in his coveralls in the field, and someone came to him, and you know, he had to go do something, and he comes out, takes those coveralls off, he's got his suit on underneath it, ready to go to work at all times. And the first impressions that we give are so extremely important. How you dress leads to first impressions. This is in the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Now take a look there, and you can just say in your mind, think in your mind, who would you think was the person you would listen to if they were trying to teach you about how to bring peace? Who would you listen to if they were really trying to teach you about anything, unless you were trying to figure out how to rob somebody? You know, think about that. Our clothing is so extremely important. Those first impressions are so very important, especially with the Peaceful Solution. You know, we work with the children and try to make sure they have their shoes tied, their shirts tucked in, their ties on, that they have their clothes pressed. It's a challenge. I mean, it's a job. But we can do it. We can deal with our children and make sure they're ready to teach peace at any given time when the opportunity presents itself, okay? Praise Yahweh. I know you've all heard the old saying, you are what you wear. Well, there's a certain amount of truth in there because it does affect your feelings. Remember, an influence is anything that affects the way you think, feel, or act. So we've got to remember about these influences. And if it influences you to be dressed up the way Yahweh says to dress up so you can teach, so that you don't feel some kind of ashamed or anything like that, well, by all means, we need to be dressed for the job in anything that we do. Another thing that we have to be very careful of, and we've been hearing a lot about it lately, is choosing friends. Choosing friends wisely. Friends don't trespass against friends. They don't trespass at all. But friends don't trespass. That means, guess what? Unless it's your property, you don't touch it. Now, if you're an authority over a situation and it requires that something is moved or whatever, and you're the authority over that entire situation, then you do what's necessary. But you don't touch other people's belongings. That includes their children. Don't touch anybody else's child. Unless that child belongs to you, you should not be touching them. Boys, girls, unless that classmate of yours belongs to you, which I don't see that occurring, but unless it's your property, you don't need to be touching. We need to stop touching. No touching. If we can just learn to follow Yahweh's laws, these simple laws, we could, in fact, stop all fistfights in 30 days. You know how? By not touching, not trespassing. It's so simple. 30 days or less, it would all be stopped if everybody would just pay attention to not trespassing. You know what else? We could stop all of the STDs and everything in the world. Stop homosexuality, 30 days or less. No touching. Don't trespass. We could stop it all. Praise Yahweh. We could stop it all in less than 30 days, okay? Got it? So, no children on your lap, no playful gestures with somebody else's child. In fact, you should really think about even having your own child on your lap. When they reach a certain age, you should be very careful about those things. You got to remember the 12 steps to fornication. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get with your counselors and they can help you. But we remember the last stage where it left off at. The touch on the shoulder, on the hand, on the face, whatever. We remember those things. And so we have to be very careful in dealing with our children and others. Please turn to 2nd Kepha, page 961 real quick. I just wanted to stress again how important it is, this Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, page 961. It's talking about love and peace be multiplied to you through the full knowledge of Yahweh and Yeshua our King. And if you go on down, it says, also for this very reason, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, which is moral excellence, and virtue knowledge. To knowledge, temperance, which is self-control. To temperance, perseverance. These are character traits. This is the peaceful solution right here. You're reading about it. So that you will be neither barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our King, Yeshua Messiah. If you look at verse 10, it says, therefore, my brothers, be all the more diligent to make your calling and election sure, for if you do these things, you will never fall. And in this way, an entrance into the everlasting kingdom of our King and Savior, Yeshua Messiah, will be supplied to you. And what I'd like you to do is go put in your notes 1 Yochanan 2:15. 1 Yochanan 2:15, we can go back to not loving the way of the world. Read that, 1 Yochanan 2:15, and not loving the way of the world, not being influenced by the lusts of the world and how the world operates and how they treat their children or how they dress. We need to remember all these things because Yahweh is making us His perfect teachers. Thank you. And with that, it's my great privilege and honor, if you'll all please stand, to present to you the great Kahan Alyanai Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Hello. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Today I'm going to be speaking about the progress we're making with the peaceful solution, how Yahweh is working in Africa. We're going about teaching peace to this dying world. I'm sure much of the news we get from Africa is news of disease and wars and famines and nothing really to write home about. But there is something to write home about, and that's the peaceful solution. We have people all over Africa, dedicated men, women, and children who are studying, getting themselves ready to go out and teach, and who are actually going out to teach the peaceful solution. They're moving from city to city. They're, working very hard and getting the word out, and people are accepting it, as we're going to see very soon in a very short video. In Ghana, we have lots of people there as well, going from Takoradi to Teshi to Kumasi. We have also in Kenya. You're going to see a few clips from Kenya as well today, from Nairobi to Nakuru to Thika to Muranga to Kitui, all over 23 groups in Kenya alone. Thousands of people who are ready to go out there and teach the peaceful solution. Not to talk of Zambia, as well as Uganda, even Republic of Benin, and many other countries. If I have to go over all of them, then that's what we're going to be doing today. So we're going out. In Lagos, in Nigeria, for example, we started out in Lagos, and then we began to fan out. And right now, we're building teams of teachers in various other cities who are already going out to teach the peaceful solution. If we quickly turn to 2 Timothy chapter 2, if we read from verse 1 to 2, that's on page 937 in the book of Yahweh. It says, "You, therefore, my son, be strong in love that is in Yeshua Messiah, and the things which you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will also be able to teach others." And we've been learning what to teach. Now we've been teaching what we've learned, and now we're making teachers, making fishers of men, of other people. And on one of the trips we went, one of the latest trips that we went on, that was to Jos, up north in Nigeria. On that journey, about halfway through the journey, we saw this double rainbow that seemed to accompany us for the rest of the journey. And it was very bright. We have videos of it. And if you recall, there is Boko Haram activity in the north of Nigeria, terrorists, bombings and drive-by shootings and so on up north. And the city we went to, we have a few brothers living there who are also working with the peaceful solution. But the city had been hit just a couple of weeks before we got there. In fact, we went to the very spot where hundreds of people were killed in a double explosion, car bombs, twin car bombs that went off in the city center. And Boko Haram couldn't stop the peaceful solution. Boko Haram couldn't stop the work of Yahweh. And of course, we had the prisons program going also. We went to the prisons in Jos. We went also to schools over there. We went also to prisons in other cities. Of course, in many of the prisons, we weren't allowed to take pictures or record videos. So we went there to teach them how to do righteousness, how to turn from what got them there in the first place. And many of them actually wanted to be a part of the program, though they were behind bars. We had somebody who kept on saying if only he could turn back the hands of time, because he was on death row. And he was sitting in our class, and then, we all got so emotional because it was clear that he was going to make a change, and he knew that if he'd had the peaceful solution, that things would have turned out differently with him. And that's been the case with many other cities too. The schools program, and we have, we've been talking about having Nigerian editions of the peaceful solution books. Well, that's ready now, just awaiting approval so we can go to press. The work is really moving pretty fast in Africa. And we're still working on setting up peace clubs in all of the schools in Africa, as you'll see in the video that is coming up very shortly. If we'll have disc 3, please. Disc 3. Self-control is guiding or directing what you're thinking in your mind, because your thoughts will lead to feelings. Guiding or controlling what you think, because your thoughts lead to feelings. It is also controlling what you feel, that is how you feel, because your feelings will lead to action. And there
are things that you want to do and your parents will say, no, not now. Or your teacher will say, no, you can't do this. Not that it is not right, but because it is not your age, it's not appropriate for you to do such things.
It could be anything at all that belongs to you. When you own something, it belongs to you.
When it comes to being responsible with yourself, you can say no. When faced with negative conformity in form of friends trying to convince you that everyone is doing it,
immoral, and that is why it is very important that we display moral attitude.
How do we show morality towards other people's property? We show morality towards other people's property by showing respect to other people's property. When you show respect to other people's property, you don't damage them. And you don't even touch them without first asking.
But most of all, you can anchor yourself to make choices that are positive and supportive of your moral character.
that you eventually regret. This is about your future and your self-respect. Remember, one bad person today can lead to 1,000 years of sorrow. It might be hard to be the only one choosing to be positive while everyone else is negative. So be prepared, because when they are committed to being responsible, you might just be the only one next time for what is right.
Oh, please be seated. Yes, and that's just a snapshot of what's been taking place. And thousands of people waiting to get here who are, notwithstanding the fact that many of them are held back, have been trying to get here, visas denied, over and over and over again. But these people have chosen to be part of the work, to stay connected to the chosen branch, though they're far away from here. And very soon they're going to be here. So we're all going to get a lot of help. And in closing, I'd like us to turn quickly to page 955. That's Yaqub 3:18. All right, and it says, and the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. And with that, if you'll all please stand, I'd like to introduce to you the great Kahan, Tovia Hawkins.
Shalom, everybody. You may be seated. Okay, today I'd like to cover teaching the children. So let's turn over to Deuteronomy 6. It's on page 152, Deuteronomy 6:7. And it says, you must teach them diligently to your children. And talk about them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the road, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And that's everywhere. And how are we going to be teaching that? Now, times have changed. And I'd like to show you this picture here. Can you all see it? Okay, so this picture shows how they were teaching when Pastor was growing up. Teaching the mother, teaching the child different things. Teaching them the scriptures, teaching them how to make butter from milk, and all those things. With this technology that has come to play in these last generations that, pastors talked about, that we got to be careful how we use them, how we deal with them, how they influence us, if we let them influence us. Are we strong enough to overcome that, to not let these things influence us in a negative way? And we are, because of the teachings. If we're diligent in our studies and diligent in listening to what comes over the radio, what comes in the newsletter, these things, we need to take the time to teach our children. And you say, well, I don't have time. I work. My wife works. We all work. Well, in the parenting book, it talks about, on page 43, it says self-control. Effective parent teaching, self-control to their children. It's on page 43. It's in lesson 6. It says, you probably think I'm still working on developing self-control myself. Okay? How am I going to teach it to my children? It says the great news is that as long as you are working on developing self-control, you are already teaching it to your children. When it comes to parenting, your example counts for more than you really realize. So you got to remember that. Your example, what you do, how you take the knowledge that you get here, what you do with it, how do you apply it in your life when you leave here. Okay, teaching them about the distractions, teaching our children. Just like Pastor, when I say teaching the children, I know when Pastor gets up and teaches, I think I'm a child to him because he's so knowledgeable. And it's the same with the parents in teaching them about distractions, the phone, the internet, the clothing, the peers, your peers, who you hang out with, like the great Deacon David was talking about earlier. That all plays in effect with what you do and how you your character and your values. And in the character book, it's on page 55. It says, measure yourself by the things you value. What do you value? What are your values? I know we go around to a lot of schools, and they value, these. We get a lot of these. They value these. Well, it can be positive or negative. So hopefully when you're valuing these things, technology, it's in a positive, like Pastor said. It says on page 55, we live in a world of constant interaction. That's interaction with everybody. But these interactions influences the way we think, feel, and act. And ultimately what we value. Influences can either have a positive or a negative effect on our character. It is up to you to be aware of how these influences will affect what you value and your choices to obtain positive character. And we have to remember that all the time, 24/7, every day, wherever we're at. Teach our children. Teach our children about the diseases in the world. You hear about all these diseases going around. Pastor's been telling us for years what we need to be doing. And if you're not doing them, you're not listening. You need to stop and listen. Because he is telling us what we need to do before. If you're not doing them yet, then you need to be doing them. The entertainment, our lifestyle, the lifestyles that are out there. We need to teach these to our children. If y'all turn over to 446, it's Psalms 34:6. It says, the humble one cries out, and Yahweh hears him. He saves him out of all his troubles. And we need to remember that. We need to be praying, doing everything that we're supposed to be doing, and crying out to Yahweh, because without him, we are nothing. And we need to remember that we can't do this without him, without the last day's witness. Okay? Praise Yahweh. In Psalms 33:5, it says, He loves righteousness and judgment. The earth is full of Yahweh's kindness. In verse 4, it says, Yahweh's law is righteous, is right, and his work is done in truth. So we need to remember that when we're getting instruction. We may not understand at the time why we're told to do it a certain way, but understanding will come. Pastors told us that. Other cons have told us that. If you all turn over to 506 in Proverbs for my last scripture. 506. It's Proverbs 16:24. It says, pleasant words are like honey, are like a comb of honey, sweet to the soul and healthy to the bones. When we greet people, when we talk to people, we need pleasant words and greet them properly and have that do you acknowledge them. So remember these things to teach your children diligently, like it says in Deuteronomy 6:7. And with this, if you all please stand, I'd like to turn it over to the great Khan, Sophania Heimerman Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the great peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Truly a great joy and honor to speak to the saints of Yahweh. I'd like to remind everyone of a great prophecy that we have to look forward to. If you take your scriptures and turn over to Revelation chapter 21. Revelation chapter 21. And it's a great joy to see the pictures that Great Khan Ali Nai showed us with the joy and the excitement, the actual life that these people have within themselves as they receive the information that brings forth life, that which is life-giving. Now, Revelation chapter 21, if you look at verse 1, it says, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And we know that this is what we will restore. We'll bring back that perfection as we speak about the purple and that which is pure. We're going to bring back what Yahweh created that was made perfect in the beginning, but man got away from, that man destroyed. We're going to bring that back, that perfection. And if you look down to verse 4, and Yahweh will wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there will be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, nor will there be any more pain, for the former things have passed away. And this is where we're going to have a very active part in bringing about this making an end of sin, getting rid of that which brings forth death. The wages of sin is death. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 56, you can write that down for your notes, the sting of sin is death, but the power over sin is the law. And this is what Yeshua came when he said, my peace I bring to you. He brought the laws of Yahweh to them. He brought which was life-giving to them. And if you turn to Yochanan chapter 4, turn over to Yochanan chapter 4. It's on page 817, Yochanan chapter 4. The laws that Yeshua taught, as the House of Yahweh teaches today, they bring forth this life. In Yochanan chapter 4, page 817, let's look at verse 11. Then the woman said to him, man, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you have that living water? Now here Yeshua was speaking about this living water. And of course we know it was his teaching that was what was living. That's what brought forth the life. Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, along with his children and his cattle? Yeshua answered and said to her, whoever drinks this water will again become thirsty. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never become thirsty. They will never lack for an answer. They'll never lack for a solution to a problem. You know, they'll be full of the peace and the joy and the love that Yahweh offers in these last days. That's the water that Yeshua brought forth. He brought forth the water of life. For the water that I will give him will become in him like a well of water springing up into everlasting life. And the woman said to him, man, give me this water, so I may never become thirsty, nor have to come here to draw water. Now, I want you to think of something. As we go to these schools, you know, they have nothing but death. And that's all they've ever been taught. They're under that veil of deception that lies in the hearts and minds of the people today until they hear the message that brings forth life. And if you could compare it to a body and how a body is sick, and then you have a life-giving substance that comes and it flows through the veins. And I can tell you, as Great Deacon David said, when we come through the schools, it's that life-giving spirit that comes forth to these people. And yes, we do get their attention as we come through with our books in our hands and our smiles on our faces, ready to teach the peaceful solution to them, ready to give them this life that Yeshua said, I come and I bring freely. Freely I give to you. And this life-giving substance, we know we can have our supplements, we can sit on the shelf, and we can look at them all day long, but unless we take them, they're not going to help us. So when we bring forth this message and they continue with it, it takes away the sickness. It removes this death, the sting of sin that is upon the people today, and it brings forth the life. Let's look at Revelation chapter 22, verse 17. Revelation 22, verse 17. And this, again, this is a great prophecy of us in our becoming teachers of righteousness, removing this death and sorrow and misery from the people today. And it was just about one of the last things here that Yeshua reminded us of in Revelation 22, verse 17. He said, "And the Spirit and the brides say, Come." You know, this is going to be our part here also. "And let him who hears say, Come. Let him who is thirsty." Those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, who hunger and thirst after the solutions to their problems. "And whoever will come, let him take of the water of life freely." May Yahweh bless your understanding. At this time, I'd like you to please stand, and I have the great honor to turn it over to the great Kahan, Kananya Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Is everyone enjoying this beautiful purple feast? Praise Yahweh. Let's go on to royalty. I'm going to read this here for you again. I know you've heard it several times in several different ways from several different people. In regards to the color of purple, in fact, it says the color purple is specifically associated with royalty and the nobility or the noble. You know, I was thinking in regards to that royalty, you know, and that's something that Yahweh is training us to become, this royal priesthood. And I had an interaction not too long ago with the customer, and they kindly found out that I was a part of the House of Yahweh. Not that I was hiding it, you know, but you know, they brought forth those old accusations. You know, you give all your money, you know, blah blah blah, and you know, all these different things, and you could tell that they were basing their statements on rumors and uneducated opinions of others, which we know what opinions they're like, and they do stink. But people have them, and they're entitled to them. They're not facts, and that's the thing we teach in the Peaceful Solution is educate yourself. But one of the things that I always remember them telling us or accusing us of or demeaning us because of is that we live in mobile homes. They live in mobile homes, you know. I wanted to bring to your attention and bring to our remembrance and to any who may be watching, who might be looking for bits and pieces to scorn us with. The first sanctuary was a what? It was a tent, right? And what did they do? They put it up, they tore it down, they took it with them. It was a mobile home, right? The first, or not the first, but the reestablished House of Yahweh was a what? It was a mobile sanctuary, a mobile home, right? Okay, so where are we going with that, all right? He's basically saying the same thing. We've been told, and we know through prophecy and the things that our pastors brought out to us, that what is going to come here and hover over this earth for a little bit until it's clean? What's that called? Yahweh Shema. It's not stationary, it's a mobile home, right? So when they say these things, don't be ashamed about it. Yahweh had the first mobile home ever invented, and He is the supreme king of all creation. And this ties right into us. You know, we're His children. We're that same royalty, or we're training to be that same royalty, and it's not based on where we live, but you know, it shouldn't surprise us that we kind of take on that same pattern that Yahweh has established, that He had already established from the very beginning. Of course, He doesn't need a toter to pull His around. You know, His can move just by control and will. But let's look over to 1 Kepha chapter 2, verse 9. 1 Kepha 2, verse 9, found on page 258. And just to bring to your remembrance, it says, you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Now remember, Yahweh speaks as if it is already done. A holy nation, a peculiar people. And yeah, sometimes when we do walk into these schools, we look like a peculiar people. With the young men come in with their nice shirts and their ties, and they're all buttoned up and everything, and they're not sagging their pants. And, the children, they take note, and whoa, wow, look at these guys. They're, wow, they've got ties on. They must be inspectors or something. But we're peculiar. We do stand out amongst the world because we have that character of Yahweh and how we carry ourselves. We stick out like a green thumb. I don't want to say a sore thumb, but a green thumb that's planting the seed of Yahweh in the minds and the hearts of those who we go to. And he says that you would show forth the praises. And when we go and teach forth the peaceful solution, character education, which, yes, we're teaching them without them knowing the laws of Yahweh. That is the praises of Yahweh. That's what the peaceful solution does. You can't have peace without the laws of Yahweh. Don't let anybody ever put in your mind that the peaceful solution is not the laws of Yahweh. All right? They're not educated. Okay? That you will show forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness and into this marvelous light. Let's look at Exodus chapter 19, verse 6. Exodus chapter 19, verse 6, found on page 60, and we'll probably just have to just quote a few of these here. Exodus chapter 19, verse 6. This holy nation, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now notice what he says right here after that. These are the laws that you shall speak to the children of Israel. Now, in speaking these things to the children of Israel, teaching these things to the children of Israel, and like the great Kohan Tobiah said, teaching these things to our children, we impress upon their minds the importance and the goal that Yahweh has set before us, that we went over many, many, many times before in Genesis 1:26, that Yahweh is going to make us in his image and in his likeness. And this is the job, this is the duty of parents, of teachers, of counselors, and so forth, to put these laws in the hearts and the minds of the people. Well, what is holiness? Well, for your notes, Romans chapter 7, verse 12 on page 878, the law is holy, the commandments are just and righteous. And let's look to Psalms chapter 78. Psalms chapter 78. And it's important right now, as we see the children being built up and being taught and taking this teaching and teaching others, the importance that not only pastor, but that Yahweh places, because he's like Yahweh, that Yahweh places on training up the children, because they're the generation here that have come up in this time period at the peak of sin. And they're going to be used by Yahweh, we'll all be used, but they're going to be used by Yahweh to relate and associate with their peers, those who are of the same age. When we were at the school and we were teaching, and I noticed that, when an adult got up and kind of opened everything up, they were making all types of noise and everything, and they were jibber-jabbering with each other. It wasn't really bad, but it was a little bit disrespectful because they were talking, and these were high schoolers. And then the first young teacher that got up was 10 years old. They all stopped, and they listened, right? And we asked them later on, well, why is this? And they said, because we can relate to them. We can relate to them. And when we see people who are our age doing the thing that we want to do, it's inspiring to us. All right? It's inspiring. And so they are inspired by the work that is coming forth from the house of Yahweh. And that's why we have to take this calling seriously, because we have a great power to be a positive influence and impress upon the minds of the people of the world the power of Yahweh that comes from keeping his laws, and they can too become like Yahweh. So may Yahweh bless your understanding. If you all please stand, turn it over to the great Kohan Benjamin.
Shalom, saints of Yahweh. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. What a beautiful day. I wanted to go ahead, and Pastor asked to reiterate a sermon that was given on 9/13/2014 of this year. Not everyone got to see it, and of course, I was kind of like scrambled eggs that morning. My brain was anyway. And I tried to get through it as quickly as I could, but today I'm going to take it at a little slower pace. But I still have a lot to cover, so if everybody would please right away get your pens and pencils, notebooks, books of Yahweh. And let's take a trip back in time, okay? Pastor wrote a book, and everybody's familiar with that book. There it is. The Mark of the Beast. That was the first book he wrote. He wrote it in the 70s. Okay? And notice it is a red book. You know, the children of Israel, they crossed the Red Sea when they left Egypt, didn't they? It's called the Red Sea. In that book, I want to read an excerpt from that book in chapter 11. And I'm going to move it over just a little. Right down here is the pertinent portion I'm going to read. It says, the great tribulation, which starts with a strong covenant of 7 years and ends at the end of those 7 years with a great nuclear war. Okay, now Pastor was looking forward to this strong covenant of 7 years that he knew from Scripture would end in a great nuclear war. That's on page 170 of the Mark of the Beast, chapter 11. Now, of course, we have seen this strong covenant come to pass, and I want to show you. We'll go into that. But before we do, let's turn over to Daniel 9:27. If you have your purple books of Yahweh, you can all see that, right? That beautiful purple book of Yahweh, right? And it is on the same page, I think, as in your other books of Yahweh, but page 681. Daniel 9:27. I want everyone to look at it, okay? It says, and he will confirm a covenant. First of all, in verse 24, he talks about 70 weeks. And it's not talking about 70 weeks like, 490 days, but 70 weeks of years. There's a prophecy in Yeketskia that talks about day for a week, week for a year. But he says here, 70 weeks are determined upon your people in verse 24, and upon your holy city, to finish transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the holiest of the holy people. And then he breaks this 70 weeks down in verse 25 and 26, and shows in verse 26 the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. How the Roman army would come in. He actually calls them the prince that will come, that will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And we all know from Pastor that this took place. The Roman General Titus came in AD 70, and the temple was, remember, it was plowed, was destroyed. Mount Zion was plowed like a field, where, as the prophets all spoke of in many, many different places. I don't have time to go into that right now. But verse 27 is what we're focusing on right now, because that's the last week. Daniel shows 69 weeks between 24 and 26, but then he shows this final week. And this final week is in the end time, in the last days. He says, and he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, 7 years, and in the midst of the week, he will let me just go here right now, because that word in Daniel 9:27, many, we need to establish what that means. It says, and he will confirm covenant with the many ones. And it says the word many in this verse is the Hebrew word rabim, which is the plural form of the Hebrew root word rab. Okay? And he shows you that rabim or rabin, it can be spelled either way. It's interchangeable. Okay? And this is from the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon by Benjamin Davidson. It's also in the Nuclear Baby book. If you'll pull that out in chapter 1, he goes through this 7-year covenant and shows you all these details and how these words are broken down. Now remember, Pastor wrote this book in the 70s. This peace plan this strong covenant had not been signed at that time, this 7-year plan. So Pastor was looking forward to it. He believed without seeing. And lo and behold, it came to pass on September 13th, 1993. You all remember the signing of what they call the Oslo Peace Agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians, what they call the two-state solution, where the Palestinians would have their own homeland within 7 years, okay? And Israel and Palestine would live side by side in peace without fighting after that 7 years. Now, I want you to understand something about that 7 years, and this is explained fully in all the pastor's writings in the Nuclear Baby and such, that this is a 7-year plan of action. In other words, both sides need to be keeping their end of the bargain, the agreement, the covenant that they entered into, in order for it to go forward. And if at any time one of those parties backs off their agreement, it stops that 7 years. Everyone understand that? Okay, so it wasn't like from 1993 to 2000 and then boom, that's it, nothing came to pass. It could have been if Yahweh had it in the plan. But Yahweh didn't have that planned, okay? Now I want to show you a copy. This is, you can find this online, or this is what they call the Declaration of Principles on the Interim Self-Government Arrangements, September 13th, 93, also known as the Oslo Peace Agreement. Okay, now within that, it's got all kinds of different articles, different stipulations that both sides need to keep in the agreement. But I want to show you a pertinent part of that agreement in Article 17 of the agreement. And it says that Article 17 says the Declaration of Principles will enter into force 1 month after its signing. Now remember, it was signed on September 13th, 93. It's going into effect on October 13th, 1993. That's what it's saying there. And then it has where everyone's to sign. Okay. So, the 7-year covenant that Pastor looked forward to, that Daniel spoke of, was signed, lo and behold, with Rabin. Remember? Rabin signed this. I mean, can you get any, what's the word I'm looking for? Any more detailed than that? I mean, how much more detailed could Yahweh get on this signing of this peace agreement? Okay, now, that was September 13th, 1993. That was 21 years ago. We gave a sermon a month ago on September 13th, 2014, on the exact day, on that Sabbath, it was 21 years from its signing. And remember, at that time, Daniel 9:27 was shown, and we were told at the end we needed to hurry. We needed to be in unity in 1 month, right? On October 13th, we all needed to be in unity. Was everybody working hard at that? Yes, you were working hard at that, right? Did everyone believe? Did everyone believe that what would come to pass on that day? Did anyone believe that anything would come to pass like we told you, like Pastor told you? Did everyone believe that? Great. Okay, well, 927 in Strong's, Daniel 9:27, if you look it up, it means to hasten, hurry, hurry. Okay? And if you also remember, every sermon that was given from 9:13 all the way through up to the feast, even on Day of Atonement, that number 927 was mentioned. The great Kahan Kiefer Reynolds in his sermon said, let's turn over to page 927 and look at Colossians 3:14. And he iterated it twice. And if you go back and listen to those sermons, which we should be doing anyway, even the women's presenters mentioned page 927, Colossians 3:14, about that bond of unity. Everyone remember that? Okay, if you don't, go back and get the tapes. But that number was really, really mentioned and really going around in my head for a while there. And there's a reason for it. But we were told to hurry, get to work, we can come into unity in 30 days. Okay, now, so the covenant was signed September 13th, went into effect October 13th. But what I want to focus on right now is that 21 years, okay? Now, where do I go next? So, this past June, Pastor had he saw the four colors in the sky, and he had the great deacon go out and take the picture of it. And those colors were very significant, as we all learned what the red symbolized, which was sin. Remember, it was a little lighter shade of red, which, was the color of our blood with that pork in it when we came to the gate. Some of us stopped eating pork, but we didn't completely stop eating pork because we didn't know about all the other products that had pork in them, right? And we didn't know about the blood and pus and such and all those other things. But we came here literally dead, okay, on our last leg, so to speak. And then the second color we saw was the gold, and then the green, and then the purple, right? Everybody sees it on their sash that we're wearing. Now, something took place on 7/7/7. Remember, we're talking about this 7-year agreement, the strong covenant, okay? But Pastor had a gold flake vision on 7/7/7, and everyone should remember that. I mean, that's like really indelible part of the history in our mind in the House of Yahweh. But he had that vision, and he saw the gold flakes falling. It was on July 7th of 07. And then on it was in December of 2013, we gave sermons on a number that came up that a great judge in South Carolina was up early on a prep day morning. Pastor was communicating with Pastor about an article that had been put up on the internet, and she looked at the counter, I guess, on her computer, because it counts how many people went to that particular article and grabbed from it to use in the news sources. And she said the number on it was 7613. Everybody remembers that number. Okay, now, that evening, not that evening, but the next evening, I was having a conversation with Pastor, and he mentioned that number to me, and I thought, well, wow, that's pretty spectacular, 7613. I thought 7 and then 613 laws. Wow, that's pretty cool. But I didn't know anything about the implications of it until after I got off the phone, and then maybe about 20 minutes into it, I thought, I know I've seen that number somewhere. Where have I seen that number? 7613. And I thought about it, and I thought, what? So I had a great deacon go and check the graveyard, also not the graveyard, but where they keep all the dead cars that I've wrecked over the years, that pastors let me use, that I didn't put oil in and things like that. The engines blew up, and so, I had a couple in the graveyard over there, and I thought, you know what? I think that van had that number on the license plate. So I had a great deacon go at about 10 o'clock at night over there to check, and sure enough, can I get the first slide, please? Okay, so 777, Pastor had that vision, right? And then go to the next slide real quick, and we'll go back to that slide. Okay, there's the van that I'm talking about there. That's called, we used to call that the Peacemobile, okay? Peacemobile, there was no pot smoking going on in there. You don't need to smoke pot to have peace. All you have to do is follow the 613 laws of Yahweh to have peace. Okay, so can I see the next slide? Now that's the actual license plate on the back of that vehicle. Now, I want to show you now, you can take that down, I'm going to show them the definition of 7613 in the Hebrew in Strong's, and it means elevation, exaltation, dignity. And then a little further down, you'll notice it says exaltation in rank or character. Now, y'all remember the song, the Purple song, right? The Purple song where it says, talks about purple is the rank and character of Yahweh's kings and queens. Everybody remembers that, right? Okay? Things aren't just thrown in there, to make it rhyme or something. It's a teaching. It has meaning to it, okay? So 7613 meant exaltation in rank or character. And when I first saw that, originally in December of last year, when we were doing our studies on Pastor's face in the moon and the 7613, I thought it was talking about the van down there, because it exalts or it promotes character education. So I thought, yeah, it's speaking about that van. Isn't that amazing, you know? But no, there was much more to that. So can I go back to that first slide you had up on the 777, please? Trying to go copy Kanye Huda and be nice or gentle and in the way I talk to these great helpers up there in the pod. Okay, so 777, Pastor had the vision, and then 7613, we didn't know what that meant at first, but then it through inspiration of Yahweh and the teaching of our great overseer, Yisrayl Hawkins, we figured out that, wait a minute, 7613 was the end of the 6th year since his gold flake vision. In fact, to the day, if you would have gone over the next day, it would have been, you would have had that end of that 7 years, or that 7 years since his gold flake vision. Does everybody understand that? That it was the end of the 6th year, going into the 7th year of Pastor's gold flake vision. But not just that. An elevation was taking place at that time. That's what the word showed, that we were going from the gold stage to the color purple, the purple stage. Okay, can we go to, let's see, if I want the next, do I want the next slide right now? Why don't you go to it real quick and let's see. Okay, so 7613, we started to make sense of that. 7614, 1 year later, at the end of the 7th year since Pastor's gold flake vision, something else appeared in the sky just down here in the south. In fact, it was in the exact location that we saw that gold cloud at Passover of 2013 during the gold feast that showed Pastor being crowned and showed ruby and such. You all remember that, right? Okay, so exactly 1 year after 7613, this appeared. Can you go to the next slide? If you look over to the, I guess it would be to the left, to the extreme left, the word death appears, and we're gonna go ahead and flash that for you. Can you flash it back and forth? Does everybody see that okay up on the screen? The word death was clearly written in the sky. And of course, none of us knew what that meant when we saw it. We never know what things mean until after. Just like Yeshua's apostles, you know, they saw these things and then afterwards they were like, wow, yeah, now I understand. Okay, well, while we were watching this, it sat in the sky for at least 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, and many people saw it, including some of the future priests and other priests. While we watched, a line began to form across the word death. Okay, like death was being wiped out. Okay, now remember, that was at the end of the 7th year of Pastor's gold flake vision. Okay, now, okay, so 1 year later, we saw the death cloud. Now, what did that mean? You know, I had my own ideas about what it meant, but remember, our own opinions and our own ideas about what these things mean, they don't come to, it's not our interpretation. It's not what we think these things mean. It has to fit the plan of Yahweh, and it's got to come from the greatest teacher in the world to be able to explain to us what it means. Oh, let me get my note out of there. Okay, so can you show the next picture? The next slide up in the pod. Okay, now, in the back of the sanctuary years ago, this is a banner that used to be hanging there. And everybody can see it. Pastor said, I see healthy faces. I used to see some of the sickest people come here. I see your health improving. If it will improve more, brethren, you're going to be surprised how healthy you are going to get in the next few years with these cleanses that the great Kohan Sophania just got done mentioning to us that we need to be continuing in. These cleanses you're doing and taking this death off of you. Okay, remember this process has been going on for years in the house of Yahweh. You know, the cleanses, and I'm going to get to that here in a minute. But taking this death off of us. And that's what Yahweh showed us in the sky, that death is being taken from the house of Yahweh. Okay, that this death is being taken off of us to those that have been obedient to the teachings and doing the cleanses, continuing the cleanses, not just the cleanses, that you can get at certain places, or here in the house of Yahweh, but, also cleansing ourselves from sin inside by confessing our sins, and practicing the peaceful solution and getting all the negativity out of us. That's how we're cleansing ourselves. Not just outwardly, like Yeshua said, don't just cleanse the portion of the cup, but also the inside. We got to get these things out so we can become that pure royal priesthood that Yahweh's looking for. Okay, now, let's see. So that was 7/6/14, and that ended the 7 years of Pastor's vision. Now let's go back for a minute in the history of the House of Yahweh. The House of Yahweh, of course, was established way before the signing of the peace agreement, but Pastor looked forward to that agreement. But Daniel 9:27 is what starts the ball rolling for the tribulation, and then the greatest part, okay, where the nuclear wars begin. That's the starting point right there of the great tribulation, okay? So we had in 1993 to 2000, from 1993 to 2000, okay? Pastor wrote a lot of books. We got a lot of information. We were being taught by the greatest teacher in the world on how to get sin out of our lives. And then, we had, during that time period as well, we had some of the confessions came out in the year 2000. I'm sorry, let me go back. From 93 to 2000, you had that 7-year period, okay? Then in 2000, we started doing the cleanses. We started doing the confessions in 2000, okay? 7 years after the signing of the agreement, we started doing confessions, we started doing cleanses, so on and so forth. Okay? Then, in 2007, if you remember, Pastor wrote a prophetic word in June of 2007 where the seventh Moloch poured out the seventh bowl. Remember the global warming message in Revelation 16. Does everyone remember that scripture in Revelation 16? Okay, let's go there because I'm seeing some puzzled looks. Let's go to Revelation chapter 16 real quick. Okay, Revelation chapter 16, found on page 981. I'll wait for you to get there, page 981. And it says, the seventh plague, it says, and the seventh Moloch poured out his bowl into the air, and there came a great voice out of the house of heaven from the throne saying, it is finished, or it is done. Meaning that warning message of the destruction of the firmament that the seventh Moloch put out is the finishing touches on the house of Yahweh. Learning about the microorganisms, learning about how to have command over the microbes. Well, how are we going to have command over the microbes? We have to come in complete unity with the house of Yahweh. Okay? Now, that was in 2007. And also, we also remember in October 13th of 2007, by the way, get the prophetic word that's got the timeline in it. I didn't bring the date of it up here, but there's a prophetic word magazine that has that 7-year agreement timeline. I believe it came out in 2004, where it showed the timeline of the 7-year covenant. You need to get that magazine and you need to study it. You also need to get the nuclear baby and study it. Now, 2007, so you had 2003, or 1993 to 2000, that's 7 years. Then you had 2000 to 2007. Well, something else also took place in 2004 in that 7-year stretch. We began sprinkling with the ashes of the red heifer to cleanse us from death. Remember that. Everybody remembers because you just got sprinkled, a couple days ago, right? Or yesterday? So it should be fresh on your mind, the sprinkling. The ashes of the red heifer law was brought out. All these cleanses are taking the death off of us and preparing us for the greatest time of trouble that you're about to see. Okay, now, 7 years, been 7 years since 2007. Okay, now Pastor had his vision on 777, and then we got up to the 7613. You learned about what that meant. And then we started wearing this. the purple with the 7613 on the sash. That was back at Passover. Okay. In fact, I think it might have been last Tabernacles, if I'm correct. At Passover, we started wearing the Passover 2014. We started wearing this. Okay. Now, what else was significant about 7? Let me get my other prop here. 713. 713. Okay, now, y'all remember this book. This is the 13th book of Israel. And the interesting thing about this book is it is the first purple book. Okay, the first purple book. And if you all remember, the very first sermon in this particular book is dated 7/6/13. Because, you know, the books of Israel, they're split up into two parts. You have part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is from January through June of that year. And then part 2 would be from July, which is the 7th month, through the 12th month of the year. And then it ends the book. Well, that just so occurred that this purple book was made on 7/6, or the first sermon was from 7/13. And let's take a look at the significance of that. From Strong's Hebrew Concordance, there's 713 in the Strong's Dictionary, and it means purple. You know, this many coincidence, I just don't see how anyone could not believe in these last days. How many times does Yahweh really have to show us, you know, that He is in complete control of His plan? Complete control. Now, so the end of that 7 years, you know, we got to the 7/6/13, the 7/6/14, we showed the death being wiped out. And then on September 13th of this year, we were told, because you remember the sermon title also, that was significant. The sermon title was Peace in Egypt in 30 days. And I said, well, we have 30 days left till October 13th to come into complete unity with Yahweh's house. And we all agreed that we all were working on that, right? I saw a lot of hard work going on at that time. Now, let's see. So I said, let's be at peace with Him when the feast comes on October 13th, to be in unity with Him by following everything we're taught by the house of Yahweh and being in complete unity with the teachings of the house of Yahweh, having the same words, speaking the same thing, not having doubts, getting the doubts out. And that's how you get that poison out of your body, is by cleansing. That's the only way we can get this poison out of us, is through the cleansing that the law teaches us to do. Now, so the purple book, okay. All right. So everybody here says they believed, right? Okay, so from 1993, September 13th, 1993, to September 13th, 2014, was 21 years. 3 sevens, right? Now, can I have the next slide? Because I need to show you something that Pastor said in the 5th book of Israel. Can everybody see that up on the screen? The 5th book of Israel, chapter 3, verse 46, page 21 of all pages, right? 3 sevens. He says, if you remember, a complete time is 7 years, and a half time is 3.5 years. Let's go back to Daniel 9:27 again. Actually, let's go to Daniel chapter 12, everybody. Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12. And we're going to look at verse 7. It's on page 684. Everyone should be looking at it. Everyone should have it. He says, then I heard the man clothed in linen. Now, who would that be? That's right, Pastor Israel Hawkins, the man clothed in linen, who on that future day is teaching when he held up his right hand and his left hand toward heaven. Now, you remember, he did that. How many of you were hitting? Give me a big cheer if you were here when Pastor did that, when you were in the sanctuary. He made this vow. He made this very vow. He sat up here and he put both hands up and he made this vow to all of us. And he said, he held up his right hand and his left hand toward heaven and vowed by him who lives forever, by Yahweh, that it will be for a time, times, and a half when Yahweh will have accomplished pouring out his power through his holy people, all these things will be finished. Now, could you put that slide up again, please? Next slide. 7 years from 93 to 2000, that was a time. From 2000 to 2007, to 2014, you had 2 7-year periods. That's your times. There you have your 21 years. But let's read it one more time, because there's something awaiting us. He says, it will be for a time, times, and a half. And a half. Pastors talked about that time cut short. And why does it need to be cut short? Because it's going to be the greatest time of trouble ever. What we're getting ready to see is the worst. We need to really be ready. We shouldn't be slacking off one bit. Everyone understand that? We need to be in complete unity. Now I want to show you something. Everyone said they believed, right? That October 13th, something was going to take place. Well, something did take place. Pastor was sitting. He wasn't sitting. Well, he sits a lot. He slumped over writing. But he got up from his writing and he walked across the living room and he glanced at his television that had the news on. He says he can't stand watching that thing for very long. But he walked by and he glanced at it. And you know what he saw? Can you put up, can you put up the next slide? Can everyone see that? Can everyone see that picture? It says, a symbolic vote in Britain recognizes a Palestinian state. What date does it say? Can we see what date that is, please? October 13th, 2014. Remember the two-state solution? Remember the peace plan, the 7-year strong covenant that we just spoke about? This is what Britain, by the way, Britain, I'm not going to get deep into it. Pastor's going to explain it to you. But Britain's the one that carved out the land over there. Britain used to be the empire that controlled that land. Britain has everything to do with this, and them voting on this and recognizing Palestine as a state. Do you see the implications of that? How all the other nations are going to follow this and they're going to declare their peace. Did you believe without seeing? Well, now you see it. By the way, Pastor saw that at 12:09. He saw it at 12:09. 12 plus 9 is 21. I guess these are all just coincidences. So I'll just leave you with all those facts, because that's what I'm here to give you. I'm not here to give you anything but facts. We're an educated people in the House of Yahweh, the most educated people on the face of the earth, educated in moral values, moral character, and these holy scriptures that all teach us these moral values. Everyone, please be ready, because you're fixing to go into that half a time right now. That's what you're in now. So be on your best behavior, and let's cleanse and get the sin out of the house, out of our temples, our homes here, our bodies, and this great house completely. May Yahweh bless your understanding, and I'd like to turn it over now to the great Kohan Ilya Heiler. Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. Please quickly turn over to Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6. And looking at all the things we've seen this feast, and looking at what is taking place in our world today, looking at the Ebola that is here in America, another healthcare worker today found with Ebola who had been flying across the United States, and seeing how it will take no time for this disease to spread. I don't think it's any coincidence that this disease started out in Africa where there's a great work going on, and it ended up in Dallas, Texas, to where that is kind of the hub where people come into our state and they disperse. I think the Pope is angry. I think he's mad. I think Khalil is mad. And soon everyone will see how Babylon is fallen. Because it is definitely going down. Praise Yahweh. Remember, not by sword, not by might, but by the every word of Yahweh. In Genesis chapter 6, quickly look at verse 5, and it says, Then Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of the thought of man's heart was only evil continually. In other words, they didn't have this peaceful solution which changes the hearts and the minds. They had the thoughts which leads to feelings, which leads to actions of sin. But there were some that did. Look at verse 8. But Noah found regard and honor in the eyes of Yahweh. In verse 22 it says, Thus Noah did according to all that Yahweh commanded him, so he did. Noah did all that the one sent had instructed him to do. Noah became the one sent. He gave word to everything that was spoken, and he did not revile Yahweh in any way. Therefore he found regard in Yahweh's eyes. Look over to chapter 9. Chapter 9. Look over, before we get chapter 9, look over to verse 10. Because Cush begat Nimrod. Remember, he begat this system. And in chapter 10, in verse 9, it says, Remember, when Cush begat Nimrod, the system, he began to be a mighty one on earth. He was a tyrant who deceived, who turned against Yahweh. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod the tyrant, who deceived, who turned against Yahweh. Deception is a very easy thing. And we can become like Nimrod by speaking against anything that the one sent has said. We can become a tyrant. We can become a nemesis. We can become a stumbling block who can cause one of the least of the children to fall. And it would be better that a millstone be tied around our neck than to speak against one thing that has been brought forth by Yahweh's chosen, the seventh Malach, the only one sent in these last days to speak on his behalf, to teach us that we may gather this knowledge, this golden oil, that we can fill our lamps and go forth to teach what we've learned. And it's very important that we remember that, because we're talking about two different characters, and one is known as a beastly character. And it's very easy to let carnality in, that we may say things that we later regret, as the Peaceful Solution says, hindsight is 20/20, in a very basic educational level. But if you look over to chapter 9 and look at verse 11, 9 verse 11, and it says, Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And remember, Yahweh put the Sabbath as a mark between his people, but he also puts up another sign, as we've seen signs from heaven in these last days. In verse 12 it says, And Yahweh said, There shall be a sign of the covenant which I make between me and you. Now, when Yahweh makes and says, when Pastor says we see his face in the clouds, does it not represent the entire house of Yahweh? Well, when this covenant was made between Noah and Yahweh, is it not the entire house of Yahweh? Even those who had never come yet. That covenant is between the entire house. Everyone. Remember, all means all. And in finishing off verse 12, it says, I will make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth, the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. Now look back to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26. Because Yahweh's making this covenant with Noah between him and the earth. Well, what is so important about the earth? What was supposed to be done? Well, Yahweh said from the beginning, in verse 26, Then Yahweh said, I will make man in my image according to my likeness, and they will have rulership. They will have rulership over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Yahweh made this covenant with Noah, And he made it with Abel also. But this sign was shown to Noah, a promise to Noah, something that was given as a reminder to Noah for all generations. That we will take the ones who think like me, who act like me, who make decisions like me. And I have no doubt that Noah understood that it was going to be a royal priesthood in the end. Just as Yahshua spoke in Hebrews chapter 11, when you read about the faith, he goes from Abel to Noah to Abraham to Sarah. He speaks about all the prophets and apostles, the great men and women of old. And at the end, he says, all of them without us would not be made perfect. They all knew that in these last days, this purple, this purity, this pure perfection would come under the directions of a high priest that was perfect and under the guidance of a one sent who would not bend in any way, who would direct his people, Yahweh's people, how to choose righteousness. Now we knew there would be a beastly system that would hate, one that would hate completely. Recently, one of the young deacons just spoke about this, and it was the article that says, the Pope was saying, do we try to save our own or through Christ? Well, of course, the Pope doesn't use either one, but that's what he's asking the people. And he makes the comment, he says, rather than accepting the Christ message of salvation, the leaders reduce salvation to the fulfillment of the 613 commandments they have created through their own intellectual fervor, through their own passion. Well, how many places do you know, how many leaders do we have outside of the House of Yahweh that endorses 613 laws? None. So we would like to thank him for acknowledging that we will not bend outside of these 613 laws. And we would also like to thank him for acknowledging that only those who are training to be leaders stand behind the one sent who says such things. Praise Yahweh. You know, 7 years have come to a completion in many things. Tomorrow addresses 7 years. Remember, Pastor said in 7 years we can completely change our DNA. 7 years, false accusation, scandal, brought the arrest of one person in the house of Yahweh. Tomorrow marks 7 years since he was taken into captivity. All of us went through that. Many ran, but all of us stood. In that 7 years, Yahweh has made us stronger to deal with and to see the adversary as they come. And no doubt the one they tried to break has become stronger than they could have ever imagined through what they put him through. Now, the Pope finishes up. He said, God's only wish to save his people is to save his people. So God's only wish is to save his people. But so often we want to make the rules for our salvation. Now, I don't have enough room to put the canon law up here and to invite, sin, sodomy, abomination after abomination in, which we wouldn't do. But remember, what are morals? What are morals? The rules. And what do they do? If we can put this up on the monitor, this is the very basics of what morality is all about. Morals. What do they have to do with my character? Well, they teach me how to choose between right and wrong, between righteousness and evil. They teach me how to choose this day whom I will serve, whether Yahweh, which leads to life, or whether the Catholic Church, which leads to death. There is one who does sit on a horse, and he does take this picture of righteousness, and people do run to them. The house of Yahweh, we know through our teaching that we've received that there's other religions that aren't hated because of their stance. It's because they have righteousness, a small amount of righteousness, but he knows that once they hear of this, and it's going out so fast that I'm sure even the Pope is amazed with how fast this is going. He knows when they hear it, that alarm's going to go off. He knows he's losing members so fast. He's losing money so fast. Business is bad for the Catholic Church. Business is bad for Satan. We have to make sure, put forth everything we have to stand firm in complete unity, and I mean absolute complete unity with the one sent to become purple and do our very best, praise Yahweh, to do our very best to always strive, and that's what Yahweh asks, for us to do our very best, to strive to come into unity with Yahweh. And to do that is to come into unity with the one sent. You know, it's amazing when you see the things in Africa. I know many people still wonder about this peaceful solution. Look at the lives that are changing and how fast they're changing and how many people Yahweh is calling through His laws, which are known as the peaceful solution, which come directly from this great book of Yahweh, which Isaiah told us to search out. And with all of these tools, this job gets done. We leave one thing out, even the books of Yisrayl, which are gold, fine gold. If we leave anything out, we're not in unity. So let's come in complete unity with the one sent and make sure that we stand in our place and do what Yahweh has called us to do. At this time, we'll turn it over to the great Kahan for closing, or for announcements.